Hello everyone, welcome back to another F1 Fantasy video. Of course, this is going to be for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix happening, qualifying on Friday, remember, and the race on Saturday. First of all, thank you all for the support on my channel at the minute. It's been mind-blowing how much you peeps are loving the content at the minute. Of course, like and subscribe. Follow my Twitter for more details on F1 Fantasy. I've got a Discord, I'll link it below. And of course, join my F1 Fantasy League. We've got over 200 people in it now, which is insane. But anyway, let's get straight into the video. So, first off, let's talk about the top 5 drivers from Bahrain. Now, of course, we knew he was going to get top. By how much? Well, we've figured it out now. It is Max Verstappen with 45 points from Bahrain. He got the pole position points, the race win points, and the fastest lap. He did not get driver of the day, which I thought was very unlucky. There wasn't much else he could have done to get it. However, 45 points, a very good haul from him. Of course, you want to be keeping your eye on him. However, the best teams don't necessarily need him. Then you have Sainz with 36 points. Of course, he had a decent race coming third, beating his teammate Charles Leclerc, who I thought last weekend was the better option. However, at his price at the minute, he's gone up since last race weekend. Not by as much as I thought he would. However, driver of the day, of course, keeping up with Perez, which is a feat considering he's just in that insane Red Bull at the minute. He probably was the second best driver on the track, so driver of the day is sort of understandable. Then we move on to the third best, which was Sergio Perez. This was my boy going into last race weekend. Again, 31 points isn't bad considering he didn't get any fastest lap points or driver of the day points. Had a solid performance, qualifying 5th, which was good enough, then getting into 2nd place with that Red Bull race pace. This is why I recommend Perez very highly going in to Saudi Arabia, because he doesn't get as many points as Verstappen. However, your team can dramatically improve. And as you can see from last race weekend, they both get you very good points. And then we have 4th and 5th, which is Leclerc on 22 and Russell on 20. It was a very good race from Russell. He was in the podium positions at one point, 2nd place. However, he had to nurse a few problems, and with Mercedes not looking as fast as Red Bull and Ferrari, 5th, keeping Lando Norris at bay was very promising, and he did deserve that price increase. So 20 points, very respectable. And Charles Leclerc, again, he had to nurse a few issues with that Ferrari, locking up into every corner, but coming away with 22 points with that 4th position. You couldn't ask for much more from him. And then also, I want to give a special mention to Guan Yu Zhou, Lance Stroll, and Kevin Magnussen, as they also deserve a lot of praise for last weekend. Of course, Lance Stroll, Hulkenberg crashed into at the start and had an amazing race to get back into that 10th position. Guan Yu Zhou again qualified 18th and managed to get up all the way into 11th. And again, Kevin Magnussen did something similar to Zhou, qualifying 15th and being able to pull his car all the way up to 12th. Amazing from all those drivers. They are definitely some of the cheap drivers to keep an eye on going into Saudi Arabia. Then we move on to the top constructors you want to keep an eye on. And to put it very simply, you want to keep an eye on Red Bull. Of course, they got 89 points last weekend. Ferrari, who got 73. Again, they got a lot from the fastest pit stops as well. Red Bull and Ferrari, well, maybe not Ferrari, but Red Bull are very quick on pit stops as well, so they will get you a few points on that. And Ferrari got 15 extra points this weekend because of the pit stops. And of course, Mercedes is the other good shout, because Ferrari and Mercedes are all around 20 million. You can make a good team with Ferrari and Mercedes. And then, of course, Red Bull and Ferrari are the other good option as constructors, which you can build a very decent team around. So with that being said, the constructors you want to steer clear of, again, it's McLaren. They've gone up 0.1 million to 23.3. However, still way too expensive for what they give you, considering they only got you 36 points last race weekend. Mercedes and Ferrari both got you a lot more, and they are cheaper. Again, Aston Martin, it's not the worst shout in the world, but I would steer clear of them for now. They only managed 20 points. They still actually went up by 0.5 million in transfer value. However, as a constructor in F1 Fantasy, you can't be getting less than 30-40 points. Otherwise, it's just not valuable enough to have in your team. Same goes for VCarb, who had a dreadful weekend. I would steer very clear of VCarb from now on. No one knew how bad their race was going to be. Everyone thought they'd be a little bit closer to Aston Martin, but from the looks of things, VCarb, definitely not an option, and Aston Martin you have to be very careful with. And then anyone below VCarb you don't want to touch, purely because they don't get you enough points as a constructor. They don't get you any more than like 10-15 points, which is what I would say is half the points minimum you would need from a constructor. Then drivers you want to avoid since Bahrain, again it would be both McLarens. They are way too expensive and don't offer you enough. Of course, Norris came 6th and Piastri came 8th, and at their price values of 19.1 and 23.1, only getting 10 points and 16 points is not enough to be in your team. Then again, another one which I think people will want to hop on this weekend, but I would highly recommend not going anywhere close, would be Nico Hülkenberg, because we saw last weekend exactly why you shouldn't bring in a driver like that. Hülkenberg is renowned for his qualifying. We know he can do well in qualifying. However, in F1 Fantasy, you do not actually want one of your cheap drivers to be good at qualifying, because they're most likely gonna get less points purely because they're going to drop further back in the field, get minus points, pick up a few -1s from being overtaken, and you don't actually score points, and you don't score any points if you come 11th or below in F1 Fantasy for qualifying. So like with this weekend, Hülkenberg came 10th with 1 point. That seems pretty good. However, he finished the race in 16th, which meant he lost -6 points on race positions lost, which gave him a net -3. And that is why you should steer clear of drivers like Nico Hülkenberg. Now, another driver to steer clear of now is Fernando Alonso. We've seen Lance Stroll in that Aston Martin. He's still quicker than the rest of the field, which is what myself and quite a few others were worried about. However, he can beat the rest of the field, as we know now. So Lance Stroll looks like a much better pick compared to Alonso, who is around 4 million extra. 4 million that could be much better spent somewhere else. So with that out of the way, let's have a look at some of the team selections for Saudi Arabia. Again, like last week, I will start off with, I will call it the Sergio Perez / Ferrari driver team, because you can place Perez with one of the Ferraris. It's very close between those three at the minute. However, I will default it as Perez when I'm showing you. However, if you do want to change it, you just obviously change out Perez for Sainz or Leclerc. And this is the first variation of the team, which is Sergio Perez, Lance Stroll, Yuki Tsunoda, Logan Sargent, Zhou Guanyu, Red Bull Racing, and Ferrari. Now, this is the team I will most likely be going for in Saudi Arabia, and that is because of a few things. Of course, Sergio Perez, we've seen, if he has a decent race and gets into the podium positions, which is definitely doable with Sergio Perez at the start of the season, especially around Saudi Arabia, where we know he's pretty decent, he can keep up to Verstappen enough so that dropping from Verstappen to Perez with Red Bull and Ferrari is worth doing. Again, Stroll, I would say Stroll over Ricciardo or Tsunoda. I think those three are in a bundle together, purely because now we can see Aston Martin do actually have a little bit of a gap that we didn't think was there between VCarb and Aston Martin. So Lance Stroll definitely is a better pick for now. And then Logan Sargent, again, I have gone for purely because of the qualifying stats. He tends to do not that great in qualifying. However, he has the chance to do better in the race in that Williams. And also he is dirt cheap, saving you a lot of money, getting you ready for that Verstappen switchover, which will be happening in the next few races when we have enough money. And then Zhou Guanyu definitely looks like the better option to Bottas, similar to Sargent. He qualifies worse, has decent race pace, so he gets more points overall. Again, Red Bull and Ferrari, they got so many points last weekend. For me, I still believe it's just not worth not having Red Bull and Ferrari as constructors. Those two are the most important. Now, there are two different variations to this team. I'll show them now. First off, with the team I was using last weekend with Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Albon staying. Now, this team by all means is not bad, because when it comes to these drivers at the bottom of the transfer value, it very much is a roulette wheel with all of them on it, randomly selecting who's going to do well or not, because it's so difficult to know going into a race weekend who looks like they'll do better in F1 Fantasy, because it doesn't actually matter who does better technically in the races. It's all about doing well in the F1 Fantasy, which normally is qualifying badly and then doing a race. So I will actually be celebrating if Logan Sargent qualifies 20th, because that'll be perfect. There's the only way is up. And the third variation for the Perez and Ferrari team would be quite an interesting team, because you replace Tsunoda and Albon with Gasly and Ocon. Now, hear me out with this. Again, like I can't keep saying enough, we saw what happened in Bahrain, 19th and 20th. If they just put a qualifying lap on the timesheets, then you get 0 points. And theoretically, if they don't crash out, the only way is up. And that's what we saw last race weekend with them getting both 6 points and 7 points. So Alpine actually all of a sudden looked like a decent team to have because their qualifying pace looked shocking. However, their race pace wasn't actually too bad. So keep an eye out for the Alpines because I actually really like that team. I do think it's the differential to the team I'm going to be picking. However, I definitely think it's a very good team overall. And then another team variation you could choose for Saudi Arabia is, of course, the Mercedes and Ferrari combo. Now, last weekend, I said this was not worth doing. I still think the Red Bull-Ferrari duo is a better constructor to keep an eye on. However, Mercedes and Ferrari did better than the Red Bull V-Carb and the rest Red Bull Aston Martin teams. So, this definitely is another good option because if you have Verstappen in your team and he does get driver of the day and fastest lap, then it's worth doing this team. It's a lot to ask, but technically it should have happened in Bahrain. So this team could get you very similar points to the Red Bull Ferrari with Perez. Again, Lance Stroll in that team, very reliable it looks like for now in the Aston Martin. That is definitely nowhere near the McLaren or the Mercedes, and again though, nowhere near the rest of the grid. Looks like they're pretty much in no man's land for that 9th and 10th position. And then of course, you do have variations to this team. However, I've shown you the team with Sargent, Magnussen and Zhou purely because, again, like I've said before, all of them tend to do worse in qualifying but have better races, so you'd get more points out of them. Again, you could do the same thing, bringing in an Alpine driver like Gasly, or you could bring in Albon, or you could bring in Tsunoda. And those are all the teams I would advise for Saudi Arabia. There are a few other teams you could make, again, the Aston Martin Red Bull team and the Red Bull V-Carb team, both with Verstappen. However, I don't think they get you enough points compared to these other two team selections, so I would steer clear of them for now. However, if I change my mind, I will be going live on Friday before qualifying after free practice 3, and I will give you a little bit more information. And again, chips wise, I would highly recommend not using any chips. A lot of people used chips last weekend, and I know why. It was just to be on the top of the leaderboard for the first weekend, which is fair enough. However, everyone who didn't use a chip will be better off when the sprint race weekends start coming in. However, Saudi Arabia is not the time to use it. Now, no negative, potentially. I'll talk about that more on the live because I need to see practice to be saying that. However, for now, I would not go anywhere near the chips. And if you did use no negative, it'd be very much just before qualifying, so you know exactly why you're bringing them in. However, I'm now going to be going on a little bit of a rant, which I'm going to be getting a little bit annoyed about. And that is because I really do still believe F1 Fantasy is fundamentally flawed with how the driver and constructor values are changing throughout the races, because they can't seem to get it right. And it's really infuriating, and I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way, but this is the reason for it, and I have a few examples. The first example is with Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon. Esteban Ocon, 7 points. It meant he went up 0.5 million in transfer value. Pierre Gasly, 6 points. You'd think, okay, he probably went up 0.5, maybe 0.3 if they're being mean. No, Pierre Gasly went down 0.1 million. Care to explain that, F1 Fantasy? Who on drivers who were last weekend priced at the same value? Apparently, there's a 0.6 million price change now between 1 point gained last weekend. It makes absolutely 0 sense. Again, another one, Gasly and Alonso. Gasly got 6 points, like I've said, and he went down 0.1. However, Fernando Alonso, who was almost double his price on 7 points, went up 0.1 million. Again, that makes 0 sense. Surely a driver who's valued at 15.8, 15.9 now should drop 0.3 or 0.5 after scoring that little amount of points. But no, F1 Fantasy seems to think otherwise. Then again, for another low-paying driver, Logan Sargent was on 5.5 million. He's now dropped to 5.4 million. However, he got 3 points. That's not bad for how much he's costing you. That is amazing for how much he's costing you. How he's lost value from getting 3 points, considering he's 5.5 million. That's what you would expect from a driver at 5.5 million. I don't think his price should have changed much. I don't think he should have even gone up in price. But to drop when getting 3 points at 5.5 million is absurd. And then not only this, but you've got the big boys of Sainz and Perez both getting 30 plus points last race weekend. They both got 0.3 million in price increases. I believe it should have been more, but fair enough. Especially on Sainz, I believe he should have gone up minimum 0.5 million. That is a joke how it's not gone up further than that. But would you blame me for thinking, oh, so if they went up 0.3 million, all of the other drivers close to them probably went up 0.1-ish? No. Apparently Leclerc and Russell, who got 14 and 16 points less than Sainz, deserve to go up 0.3 million as well. And again with Perez, 9 points below Perez for Leclerc, 11 points below Perez for Russell. Apparently they go up the same price. And then what's even crazier is you have a look at Hamilton and the McLaren boys. They didn't even score more than 20 points, which, especially for Lando Norris, only getting 16 points, does not deserve a price increase. Deserves a price drop, being the second most valuable driver, not even getting above 20. It's crazy. However, he's gone up 0.1 million in price. Again, Oscar Piastri only got 10 points. 10 points for 19 million. And apparently F1 Fantasy thinks that's 0.1 million price increase. Same with Hamilton, only 12 points. He's gone up, even though he's 19.3 million, now 19.4. So I really do think F1 Fantasy need to reconsider how they're changing values of drivers. However, that is the only thing I wanted to complain about so far in the season. Apart from that, it's been an amazing season so far. My team last weekend got 239 points, a great way to start considering I didn't use any chips. I'll show you my league now. Thank you all so much for joining it. Here is the code and here is the link. I'll put it all in the description like I usually do. Again, I want to thank you all for the support so much because I have a 500 sub special coming up. I did not expect to get to 500 subs anywhere close to where I was now. It was actually my target for summer, so thank you all so much. I just can't believe how much support I'm getting at the minute. And basically it will be coming out soon, that 500 sub special, but basically I promised the cat reveal and I can't show them at the minute because I'm not living at my family house at the minute, but I'm back there in 2 weeks, so I'll get that ready for then. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I will be live on Friday if you want any more questions asked. Again, comment down below if you want any more help, and thank you all so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye bye.